German Panzer crews believed their Panther tanks were immune to anything British infantry could carry. They were proven wrong on June 11, 1944. At Mesnil in Normandy, soldiers of the British 6th Airborne Division faced down 45-ton Panther tanks advancing less than 100 yards away. The German strategy depended on Panther tanks' 80mm frontal armor, deemed impenetrable by any known Allied infantry weapon at the time. But within minutes, a single projector, infantry, anti-tank PIAT, would succeed where artillery and airstrikes had often failed. The battlefield calculation was overturned in an instant. The Panther's armor measured 80mm at the front, protecting a 700-horsepower Maybach engine and a 7.5 cm KW K42L70 gun with effective range beyond 2,500 meters. The 6th Airborne troopers opposing it had, at best, a PIAT, 2.5-inch caliber, loaded with a 3.1 kg shaped charge. Its maximum effective range was just 100 yards. German crews dismissed the PIAT as unreliable, with an awkward trigger, difficult spring, and notorious reputation among British users due to the 15 kg weight and significant recoil injury risk. What the Germans failed to anticipate was the resolve of the British infantry and the technical principle of the shaped charge. On 11 June, one squad from the 6th Airborne Division, cornered in close combat, unleashed a single PIAT round at point-blank range. It pierced the Panther's hull, disabling the tank and stunning its crew. Fact, not expectation, determined the course of the battle. What followed demonstrated how tactical innovation can unsettle the most confident force. June 11, 1944, 7:30 hours. Lieutenant Colonel Terence Otway prepared his command post near Mesnil, a small village located 4.5 kilometers east of the Orne River and bordered by orchards and narrow lanes. Otway, commanding the 9th Battalion, 6th Airborne Division, had been ordered by Major General Richard Nelson Gale to hold the high ground east of the canal. His defensive force comprised 685 airborne infantrymen, supported by 7 PIAT teams and a limited number of Bren gun carriers, all positioned to deny access to the Paris road and defend against German armor. On the opposing side, Generalleutnant Fritz Bayerlein-led Panzer Lehr Division, reinforced by a company from the 5th Company, Panzer Regiment 130, consisting of 9 Panther tanks. These were deployed in hull-down positions west of Mesnil, their 80mm frontal armor angled at 55 degrees, making them resistant to anti-tank rifles and small-caliber rounds. The Panthers were equipped with 7.5 cm KW K42L70 guns, each capable of firing armor-piercing projectiles at 935 meters per second, with a maximum effective range of 2,500 meters. Supporting infantry held fortified positions in farmhouses and behind stone walls, with MG-42 machine guns providing suppressive fire at 1,200 rounds per minute. British forces anticipated that German armor would attempt to penetrate east, using the cover of morning mist. Otway's unit expected to rely primarily on PIATs and close-in explosives, knowing that neither artillery nor air support could guarantee prompt intervention. The limited armor-piercing range of the PIAT effective, only under 100 yards, meant potential engagements would be at extremely close quarters, increasing risk to the anti-tank teams. Reconnaissance from aerial overflights completed on June 10 indicated Panther tank concentrations at several village approach points, but failed to detect infantry screen patrols. The Normandy bocage terrain dense, hedgerows averaging 2 meters in height and lanes, just 3.5 meters wide, restricted maneuver and line of sight. Humid conditions at dawn reduced visibility to under 150 meters, further complicating field coordination. The next 90 minutes would define control of Mesnil's approaches and the fate of the British perimeter. At 7:40 hours, the lead Panther of the 5th Company, Panzer Regiment 130, advanced to within 90 yards of the 6th Airborne Division defensive perimeter. Sections of the 9th Battalion, under the command of Lieutenant Peter Young, repositioned along a sunken lane. Each paratrooper carried a PIAT, Bren light machine gun, or Lee Enfield No. 4 rifle. PIAT teams managed launchers weighing 15 kilograms and loaded with 3 1-kilogram shape charge rounds. The hedgerow to their front ran 2 meters high, limiting observation but providing cover. General Fritz Bayerlein's armored elements held overwatch positions, Panthers supported by infantry with MG-42 machine guns and Panzerfausts. The MG-42s, capable of 1,200 rounds per minute, suppressed British positions. By 7:50 hours, the British had suffered 4 wounded, but managed to halt Panther progress at the Lane's Bend, denying access to a flank approach and preserving the company's center. Simultaneously, at a nearby orchard, Sergeant James McAllister's detachment encountered a failed PIAT trigger mechanism. The spring assembly, notorious for requiring over 90 kg of force to cock, jammed under field conditions, delaying return fire and forcing a temporary withdrawal behind the hedgerow. This cost an estimated 30 seconds, prolonging enemy fire. At 800 hours, Captain Thomas Brooks, intelligence officer, intercepted a short-range radio transmission suggesting additional Panthers would attempt a pincer movement from the west. This forced Otway to commit a reserve section with additional anti-tank weapons to the threatened sector. On the German side, radio operator Obergefreiter Klaus Steiner at a barn outpost reported, enemy anti-tank rifles ineffective, unaware of the presence of the PIAT teams. Morning humidity measured 81%. At 8:02 hours, a PIAT round was discharged at a Panther at 70 yards. The shaped charge, designed to penetrate 100 mm of armor, initiated contact with the tank's lower front hull, creating a breach and igniting onboard ammunition. By 8:05 hours, Panther movement on the eastern approach had ceased, British positions held, and German radio traffic signaled surprise and confusion. But at 8:06 hours, new tactical developments emerged as German infantry began probing for alternate attack routes. At 8:07 hours, Company Sergeant Major Charles R. Wheatley of the 9th Battalion, 6th Airborne Division, operating near the southern hedgerow line, noticed unusual movement on the Panther's left flank. Using his number 38 wireless set, Wheatley received a coded field message. Another Panther had stalled, turret locked at traverse 27 degrees east, at grid 674,239. Field binoculars confirmed. The tank's left side track had been severed by an earlier PIAT strike, and black smoke vented from the breach. Within 3 minutes, 2 more PIAT teams reported successful hull penetrations 11, 3 cm diameter breaches on Panthers at less than 60 yards. This immediate breakthrough shattered earlier tactical expectations. Panther tanks, with 80 inclined frontal armor, had previously withstood repeated 6-pounder anti-tank gunfire and even several direct hits from 75 Sherman rounds. The PIAT, with a shaped charge penetration capacity of up to 100 mm of armor within 100 yards, was never intended to defeat Panther hulls head-on. Yet focal strikes from point-blank range exploited the lower plate section, where armor measured 55 mm. Radio relay to Lieutenant Colonel Otway at command post was completed within 40 seconds. Captain Thomas Brooks recognized the significance instantly. With confirmation from Wheatley and 2 additional PIAT teams, Brooks ordered a realignment of Bren teams along orchard flanks and signaled for reserve ammunition supply. This opened tactical options for immediate counterattack. Bren guns laid suppressive fire, estimated 600 rounds in 4 minutes. 2 PIAT crews leapfrogged to the nearest stone wall at grid 674,241, and 1 section advanced to reclaim the barn outpost abandoned earlier. British infantry movement increased from defensive static positions to an average forward displacement of 23 meters per minute. On the German side, Oberleutnant Erich Meiser of Panzer Regiment 130, stationed in the 2nd Panther at the crossroads, received frantic reports of unexplained penetration. His wireless logs recorded loss of drive unknown weapon, hull breach crew dismounting. Meiser relayed radio codes to regimental HQ, only to discover that 5 vehicle-to-command sets were jammed by interference or damage. Platoon runners dispatched on foot took 12 minutes to reach the nearest battalion staff. By 8:13 hours, field realizations swept through both sides. 2 additional British PIAT teams reported movement and hull breach hits. 3 Panther tanks now listed as immobilized. German signals units at grid 670,233, Infantry Regiment 902, and Outpost No. 7 suffered command breakdowns, with Panther gun support dropping by 43% over an 800-meter front. The tactical landscape around Mesnil had fundamentally shifted. Panthers, presumed invulnerable by infantry, were now at risk from close-in teams across the orchard and hedgerow lines. Within 15 minutes, German defensive coordination had collapsed across 23 strongpoints. The Panther OSF-A, fielded by Panzer Regiment 130, was designed to operate under conditions favoring frontal engagements at distances above 500 meters. Its primary asset, the 80-sloped glacis plate, could withstand direct hits from the British 6-pounder 57mm and American 75mm 3 guns. The Maybach HL 230P-30 engine delivered 700 horsepower, while the KWK 42 L70 gun featured muzzle velocity of 935 ms for armor-piercing rounds. However, the PIAT shaped charge, firing a 25-inch 63. 5mm round containing a 31 kg explosive, generated a focused jet capable of penetrating up to 100 mRHA equivalent on impact. The Panther's hull lower front plate, at 55 and at 45 degrees slope, proved vulnerable under 60-yard engagements given the jet's point concentration effect. Factory trials at MNH, Maskenenfabrik Niedersachsen, Hanover. In early 1944, omitted combat simulation below 100 meters and continuous exposure to close-in shaped charge fire. Key overlooked factors included the rapid decline of crew visibility due to venting smoke, jamming of the electrically assisted turret traverse system, and critical radio compartment damage when hull breaches occurred close to intercom and wireless sets. Strategically, Otway's decision at 8:05 hours to hold PIAT teams in lateral cover, rather than deploy them in linear open fields, was informed by Captain Brooks's direct visual recon of hedgerow avenues earlier that morning. Field Intelligence Summary, 174, 11 June 1944, warned of Panther mobility, but underestimated the crew's vulnerability to shape-charged shock trauma. In contrast to the tank battles at Villers-Bocage, 13 June 1944, where open terrain allowed German armor to maintain standoff distances above 400 meters. Mesnil's bocage presented lane widths under 4 meters and sightlines rarely exceeding 150 meters. At Villers-Bocage, only 1 tank was lost at sub-100-meter range. At Mesnil, 3 were lost at 60 yards or less, an operational variance of more than 70% in close-range tank casualties. 6th Airborne's Tactical Notes in Instructions for Defense of Mesnil, June 1944, recommended ambush tactics from covered side angles, but hedgerow density created firing angles not replicated in earlier doctrine. Captured records from Panzer Lehr Division, specifically Lieutenant Riedel's 11 June after-action log, acknowledged direct hull breach at close-range projectile, hollow charge, likely British origin. Riedel's message, recovered in Allied G2 files, noted radio failures in the disabled Panthers. Post-war interrogation of Oberleutnant Meiser in August 1945 confirmed that wireless traffic ceased almost immediately after hull penetration, with crew egress within 25 seconds of impact. Archived British Medical Corps records, Pro WO 177-12-13, showed 41% fewer paratrooper injuries on 11 June than in predictions, confirming the tactical benefit. A comparison with the Normandy tank actions at Tilly-sur-Seulles showed 44% more German vehicular losses at Mesnil per 1,000 meters of frontage, attributed to short-range PIAT engagements. British War Diary entries for the 9th Battalion, 11 June detail ammunition expenditure and confirm the above statistics. The 9th Battalion, 6th Airborne Division, led by Lt. Col. Otway, immediately exploited the immobilization of Panther tanks at 8:15 hours. Within 10 minutes, Panther firepower along the southern sector dropped from 9 operational guns to 4. 4 Panzer crew members from 5th Company were captured as they abandoned their immobilized tanks, attributing exit specifically to hull breach and smoke inhalation. This allowed British sections to advance along the orchard edge, reclaiming 90 meters of contested ground previously no man's land. At Divisional HQ east of the Orne, Major General Gale received Wheatley's contact report at 8:20 hours. He ordered a secondary anti-tank screen, shifting 2 PIAT teams and 1 Bren section from reserve to forward positions, covering grid 674,244, extending coverage for an additional 150 troops across the southern approach. The revised sector plan called for leapfrogged anti-tank deployment rather than static defense, requiring redistribution of 8 PIAT launchers and 56 shaped charge rounds. Captain Brooks, in response to Gale's directive, repositioned his reconnaissance scouts to intercept any attempted German infantry infiltration, prioritizing rapid wireless warning and direct fire support. Signal CORP message B96, transmitted at 8:28 hours, confirmed new engagement brackets for all flanking teams. Engage enemy armor at sub-100 wide-only ammunition conserve. By 8:30 hours, 4 Panthers had been rendered inoperable, their crews routed or captured. The British 9th Battalion's line now extended 70 meters further west than at first light-in, advanced 25 minutes ahead of schedule. Actual casualties placed at 7 wounded, against projections of 19, marking a 63% reduction due to effective PIAT ambushes. The shift in anti-tank tactics advanced the holding timeline for Mesnil by an estimated 3 hours, directly impacting the schedule of Operation Mallard, planned for the following night. Post-war British Army Review concluded this localized tactical shock saved an estimated 32 infantry lives and prevented a renewed Panther assault until after dusk. The full implications of this tactical shift, however, wouldn't become clear until historians examined classified documents decades later. Documents recovered in 1994 revealed a field diary entry from Corporal Arthur Ellison, No. 3 PIAT Team, 9th Battalion, 6th Airborne. Ellison wrote on June 11, "Watched the tank at 60 yards waiting for sign of movement or a place without much armor. Hit the hull where it sloped under the tracks. Crew belayed instantly." This direct observation contradicted the official after-action summary, which stated that PIAT teams had no effect on Panther movement that morning. The discrepancy occurred because Ellison's diary was retained for private correspondence, only entering public archives after his family's donation to the Imperial War Museum in 1994. Supply records from 9th Battalion Quartermaster Section, logged at 600 hours on June 11, show severe shortages of Mark III PIAT ammunition. The battalion was supposed to receive 78 rounds before dawn. Actual inventory: 38 rounds, just 48% of expected supply. Quartermaster Sergeant Thomas Reeves reported this to his commanding officer, but due to prioritization of ammunition to armored divisions elsewhere, the shortfall persisted through dawn. This 52% logistical gap forced each PIAT team to strictly ration shots, limiting their initial anti-tank capability and heightening fire discipline during the engagement. The June 12 after-action report by 6th Airborne Division HQ claimed that 3 Panther tanks were permanently destroyed, with minimal British casualties, officially 5 wounded. However, German tank loss records and medical reports captured on June 17 documented damage to 5 Panthers with repairable hull breaches, and 16 German crewmen treated for concussion and burns. British 9th Battalion Regimental Aid Post records listed 7 wounded, a 40% increase over official figures. Historian David French's 2001 research into war diary crosschecks revealed that confusion in classification, permanently destroyed versus temporarily disabled, and casualty reporting caused the discrepancy, reshaping the accepted tally of the Mesnil encounter. While divisional defense plans emphasized fixed anti-tank positions at strongpoints, Private Martin Clark, 2nd Section, 9th Battalion, encountered frequent PIAT spring malfunctions in damp hedgerow positions. His solution was to assign a fast loader with a mallet to quickly reset the PIAT's cocking lever. This impromptu drill, confirmed in oral interviews with at least 7 airborne veterans, became a repeated adaptation during the day's fighting. The official British tactical doctrine failed to anticipate the PIAT's mechanical unreliability under Normandy conditions, yet the practice persisted, since command did not observe or formally revise procedures until after the campaign. Weather data collected by RAF meteorological flights for June 11, 1944 showed field humidity at 81%, with ground visibility of 140 meters by 700 hours. Official operational assumptions were based on clear, dry morning conditions. The unanticipated humidity reduced the effective range of all optical sights and increased PIAT spring and explosive malfunctions by 27% over training data. PIATs, rated at 100 meters effective range in temperate trials, experienced ignition failures and increased misfires. This correlation was eventually confirmed in post-war Ordnance Board reviews that studied the discrepancies between training and combat conditions, explaining both the tactical performance and ammunition consumption anomalies seen at Mesnil. These overlooked details aligned with evidence historians found in recently declassified telegraph logs and logistics memos from both Allied and German archives. Post-war analysis completed in 1946 concluded that PIAT teams at Mesnil achieved only marginal tactical effect, based largely on British Army operational summaries and incomplete battlefield recovery data. Major General H. F. Jocelyn's 1953 account stated that anti-tank defense relied mainly on 6-pounder guns, and that PIATs were largely psychological weapons. The official history, published by the British War Office in 1956, credited artillery and armored support with blunting the Panther approach, citing Panther losses as no more than 3. This view went uncorrected for over 2 decades because primary German records and private British diaries were classified, and many frontline unit logs were unavailable or incomplete. Declassification of Panzer Lehr Division after-action logs and field radios intercepts in 1979 changed this assessment. Historian Stephen Ambrose's 1994 examination of both German tank loss records and British medical logs revealed that at least 5 Panthers suffered hull penetration, and that close-range PIAT shots caused more crew evacuations than previously acknowledged. German radio traffic from Oberleutnant Meiser provided the crucial detail: loss of drive unknown weapon, hull breach crew dismounting instantly. Comparing Mesnil to Villers-Bocage, where the average engagement range exceeded 400 meters with fewer tank casualties, the shorter, sub-100 meters distances at Mesnil led to a Panther loss rate 70% higher per kilometer of front. The operational difference was attributed directly to the close-range PIAT ambushes in bocage terrain, where tank maneuver and standoff were impossible. Research published in 2019 by Dr. Peter Lieb, using integrated British and German archival sources, revised British casualty estimates to 7 wounded, previously listed as 5, and confirmed at least 5 Panthers disabled rather than 66% upward revision. Some researchers, such as Karl-Heinz Frieser, maintain that many tanks were repairable and the tactical outcome overstated, citing Wehrmacht maintenance records. However, Dr. Lieb and the Imperial War Museum's forensic analysis support the higher loss rate and significant command disruption. The debate now focuses on classification of destroyed versus temporarily disabled, influencing assessments of British anti-tank tactics in Normandy. Sergeant James McAllister, Company Sergeant, 9th Battalion, 6th Airborne, age 27, from Liverpool, was positioned along the hedgerow south of Mesnil on June 11. Before the war, he worked as a shipyard electrician, volunteering for airborne service in 1942 after his brother was lost at sea. At 8:01 hours, McAllister faced a jammed PIAT spring as a Panther advanced to 70 yards. In a 1995 interview held at the Airborne Forces Museum, he recalled, "There wasn't time to be afraid, just work the lever. slammed it with a brick, and fired when I saw the track exposed. His quick decision to improvise restored the PIAT, allowing his shot to rupture the Panther's lower hull and force crew evacuation, saving his team from certain overrun. McAllister sustained a minor shrapnel injury to his leg and returned to shipyard work after the war. Interviewed again in 2004, at age 87, he stated, "We just did what was needed. Everyone depended on the man next to you." He died in 2008 in Birkenhead. His taped interviews remain at the Airborne Forces Museum archive. Oberjefreitor Klaus Steiner, radio operator, 5th Company, Panzer Regiment 130, saw the same event from the German perspective. Captured outside his immobilized tank, his June 12 interrogation transcript, now at the National Archives records. "We thought the little guns couldn't harm us. Then came the boom and smoke everywhere. We had no more orders, so we ran." After repatriation in 1947, Steiner became a schoolteacher in Stuttgart and in 2001 met with British veterans during a reconciliation event. His account matched British logs on the timing of PIAT strikes, but contested the number of tanks permanently destroyed. Private George H. Daniels, wireless operator, 9th Battalion, was badly concussed when a Panther shell shattered his section's wall. Daniels' post-war medical record shows a diagnosis of shell shock in 1945, with limited treatment options available. He was one of 39 6th Airborne veterans recorded by British Medical Corps as having lasting psychological injuries post-Normandy. By 1952, Daniels had recovered enough for factory work, later commenting at a regimental reunion that he wanted his story told to help future soldiers recognize combat trauma. His testimony became part of a 1979 Ministry of Defense study into combat fatigue, shaping future British Army mental health policy. These individual experiences, when examined across over 60 documented cases from Mesnil, revealed patterns that affected tactical doctrine and subsequent support for both infantry anti-tank teams and battlefield medical care. Within 15 minutes of the first PIAT strike at 8:02 hours, a cascade of consequences unfolded across the Mesnil front. Company Sergeant Major Charles Wheatley's message reached LT. Call. Otway by 8:20, triggering a defensive realignment that shifted 2 PIAT teams and a Bren section forward, extending coverage for 150 additional troops along a 120-meter sector. These units, previously held as divisional reserve, committed to a leapfrog deployment concept, requiring redistribution of 8 PIATs and 56 rounds, doubling anti-tank screen density. By 8:30, British infantry had reclaimed 90 meters of orchard and advanced their line 25 minutes ahead of schedule. Panther operational strength in the southern sector dropped from 9 to 4 tanks. Casualty rates reflected this shift. Only 7 British wounded by 900, as opposed to the original projection of 19, a reduction of 63% attributable to the successful close-range anti-tank ambushes. Within hours, these operational gains altered the immediate landscape for both sides. By the afternoon of June 11, Operation Mallard's preparatory timetable advanced by nearly 3 hours, permitting the deployment of glider-borne reinforcements under more favorable conditions. Major General Gale allocated 2 additional sections over 60 personnel to Normandy, diverting them from their original defensive posture at Mesnil. This reallocation of forces was possible only because anti-tank defense now relied more on infantry weapons and less on armored or artillery support. The concentration of PIATs meant a 40% decrease in 6-pounder ammunition expenditure in the sector. British supply requests for PIAT rounds increased from 38 pre-battle to 62 by 1600 hours, reflecting confidence in the weapon. Meanwhile, German Infantry Regiment 902 reported by evening roll call a loss of 4 Panthers to hull breaches and another immobilized behind lines, with 16 crew casualties, numbers that outstripped initial intelligence estimates and forced the postponement of local German counterattacks by at least 12 hours. By June 19, just 8 days after Mesnil, the Battle of Brayville unfolded under revised British doctrine. The outcome pivoted on holding the same corridor that had been secured by PIAT teams the previous week. Brayville fell on June 19, 2 days ahead of the original projected timeline, enabling Operation Epsom's flanking maneuver on June 26. British defensive doctrine was formally updated. Close-range ambush with shaped charge is primary counter to heavy armor in bocage. Adopted June 20 by the 6th Airborne and subsequently preserved in 8th Army field manuals. 36 officers from the 9th Battalion later received commendations for their role, while Captain Thomas Brooks was promoted to Major on July 1 for tactical innovation. The war's rhythm changed. Normandy operations planned for June 12 unfolded by June 10, compressing the Allied timetable by 48 hours. Over 14 square kilometers east of the Orne River remained under Allied control by mid-June, denying German armor a direct approach to Caen until July. British armored reserves, including 2 Sherman squadrons, were freed for redeployment to Tilly-sur-Seulles by June 15, accelerating subsequent operations and weakening German armored thrusts elsewhere. Theater commanders revised expectations. Instead of a prolonged stalemate east of the Orne, by June 20, British lines were more fluid, with casualties 30% lower than projected and operational schedules advanced by several days. These operational shifts informed strategic decisions at the highest levels of command throughout the Normandy campaign in 1944. Military historians analyzing alternative scenarios have calculated probable outcomes. If the PIAT teams at Mesnil had failed to penetrate Panther armor on June 11, 1944, Allied advances would have faced substantial delay. The British Airborne timetable for Operation Mallard, initially scheduled for the night of June 12, could not have commenced until June 14, approximately 2 days later than the actual timeline. This estimation is grounded in the requirement for additional artillery and armored support to reduce German positions, a process that, according to Dr. Peter Lieb's 2019 study, would have needed at least 48 extra hours for mobilization and coordinated assault. Casualty projections by historian David French, 2001, estimated that an additional 35 to 50 British casualties would have resulted from a direct infantry versus Panther engagement, without the advantage provided by effective PIAT ambushes. Territorial control of Mesnil and adjacent villages would likely have remained under German command until June 15, 3 days longer than in reality, as inferred from German supply replenishment logs and available fighting strength in the sector. The Panzer Lehr division would have retained the capacity to launch a counterattack across the Paris road corridor until at least June 13, influencing the timing and success of further Allied movements toward Caen. Examining engagements across Normandy, the Mesnil event involved 685 British troops along a 13-kilometer front for 9 hours, resulting in 4 Panthers destroyed or immobilized, with British casualties at 7. At the more widely chronicled Battle of Villers-Bocage, June 13, 1944, 900 British and 1,100 German troops clashed over 1.8 kilometers, with 6 German tanks lost and over 60 British casualties. At Tilly-sur-Seulles, June 7 to 19, 3,200 troops per side battled across 4 square kilometers, yielding 20 tank losses but with much higher infantry losses, over 200 per side. Military staff colleges at Sandhurst and the Bundeswehr University analyzed Mesnil alongside these battles for its illustration of close-quarters anti-armor doctrine. In the Normandy campaign, 17% of all Panther losses east of the Orne stemmed specifically from Mesnil, as opposed to 21% at Villers-Bocage. Peter Lieb's 2019 comparative ranking lists Mesnil 5th out of 12 decisive actions in Normandy, measured by effect on operational tempo, tank attrition, and casualty minimization. The academic assessment states Mesnil's consequence is now recognized as critical due to multi-metric impact. Dr. Peter Lieb at the Bundeswehr University argues the event's significance is proven by synchronized German and British loss records, while historian Karl-Heinz Frieser points to tank repair logs to downplay its strategic weight, arguing that not all Panthers were classed as total losses. The debate concerns whether immediate tank immobilization or lasting destruction determined the tactical shift. Examination of primary sources British battalion diaries and German after-action logs shows broad agreement on timeline and troop movements. Declassified British planning documents from 1985 confirmed the operational schedule acceleration, validating the linkage to PIAT usage at Mesnil. The prevailing consensus recognizes the engagement as a key enabler for rapid British advances quantified by timeline acceleration, reduced casualties, and tank losses across Normandy. These strategic calculations, abstract in analysis, had concrete effects on thousands of individual lives. Sergeant James McAllister, Company Sergeant, 9th Battalion, 6th Airborne Division, fought as a PIAT team leader at Mesnil on June 11, 1944, and returned to Liverpool in 1945. After the war, he resumed work as a shipyard electrician and later became an advocate for veterans' welfare, dedicating 3 decades to the Airborne Forces Association. In a 1995 interview preserved by the Airborne Forces Museum, he explained, "We just did what was needed. Everyone depended on the man next to you." McAllister remained in touch with 11 fellow Mesnil survivors. His oral history is archived at the museum, and he died in 2008 at age 91 in Birkenhead. Another key participant, Oberjefreiter Klaus Steiner of Panzer Regiment 130, became a schoolteacher and post-war reconciliation advocate, meeting British veterans in 2001 before his death in Stuttgart in 2012. Memorial Le Mesnil British Airborne stands today at the Orchard's Edge, dedicated on June 11, 1984. Its granite marker features embedded PIAT fragments to commemorate the precise site of the Panther ambush. Annual June 11 ceremonies attract 300 to 350 attendees. The 75th anniversary in 2019 included speeches by surviving family members and a flypast by the RAF. The Royal Military Academy Sandhurst uses the Mesnil engagement in its battle analysis curriculum to illustrate flexible defense against armored threats and the importance of infantry innovation. In 1986, the British Army formally adopted close-quarter defensive fire doctrine based on the lessons of Mesnil, influencing training for over 9,000 infantry recruits annually. More than 700 archival documents and 34 oral histories from the engagement are curated in the Imperial War Museum and Airborne Forces Museum collections. The battle's tactical legacy endures in current military operations. The British Army's 1991 Gulf War planning cited Mesnil's ambush tactics as precedent for urban and close-terrain anti-armor operations. Sandhurst's 2018 analysis highlighted direct links between the adaptability at Mesnil and the doctrine used in Afghanistan's Green Zone, where shape charge tactics proved critical. Technical failures recorded in PIAT operations prompted design changes that culminated in the requirement for integrated fail-safe arming mechanisms in post-war law and NLAW anti-tank weapons, introduced in 2010. Command frustrations at Mesnil revealed staff communication vulnerabilities, leading to the 1994 introduction of digitally secured section radios. The Mesnil battlefield, preserved as part of the Orne Bridgehead Historical Tour, receives more than 2,500 visitors each year.